eraser. And you may, hi guys, welcome. Today we're going to work on letter design. So you're going to need a piece of paper, some markers, color pencils, and choose colors that you like. Maybe a color scheme, 2 to 3 colors work great, eraser, and a pencil. And what we're going to try to do is 2 different letters. I'm using the letter B, and very lightly we're going to draw it so that when we draw shapes inside, it creates the letter. And then we're going to try to draw a letter with letters inside of it. So to start, draw a very light, loose letter B and try to make it a bit bigger than the size of your hand. You want room to draw your shapes. And I like to tell my students to keep it as light as possible because you never know if you're going to erase it or you're going to need more space. So I have one there, and I'll draw another one here. And I've had some practice, but I love drawing loose, sketchy lines so that I can find the line that works. So sometimes I go over a few times and then I'll erase and keep what I want. And make this a bit bigger. So my first letter B, I'm going to doodle, thinking about shapes and basic lines that can fill up my page and add variety with designs. Maybe you know symbols. You can draw different symbols. Really doodle whatever you want to fill your page. This is a good creative exercise to get you going with the flow. Instead of pre-planning, sometimes it's good to just see what happens when you start with basic shapes and go from there. Squiggly lines, dotted lines, curved shapes, stars, hearts, flowers, objects from nature, maybe mountains. Could also be triangles, diamonds. Now, I'm doing this activity with our classes to experiment with letter design because we'll eventually be making a logo, and the logo will have to do with the place or business or person that you're designing it for. So the symbols and the doodles may not relate, but for today we're just doing it as an activity. So anything goes, any shape, any line. You could think of playing cards. They have symbols on them. Simple shapes too, in different sizes, are great for filling spaces. So little to big circles here. The goal is to get to the edge of the letter so that you can erase that line. And all of your little shapes that you've created fill that space. So I'm going to stop here. I've shown you just a few different techniques for filling your page. I've gotten pretty much half of this bead done. It's only taken me a few minutes here, so take your time with it and play. I've done one already here to show you, so you can see that I had my lines here, and I went in and I erased them. And it sort of looks like a bee, but I feel like I could fill in even more along the edges. So try to do some different shapes. Maybe you also think about creating a pattern. But again, keep this loose, flowy. Don't judge it. You're expanding your creative mind as you try to make art without a pre-planned idea. So you're going with the flow and filling in spaces wherever you see empty spots. And the more you do this and doodle, you'll start to come up with new shapes. You'll be able to invent shapes on the spot and think of things. So if there are certain symbols that you already draw, maybe it's the letter of your name in a odd shape like graffiti or something, or maybe it's waves or hearts. Think of things you've drawn in the past. You find yourself possibly doodling in other classes. Now my bee looks a little more full, and I'm just using kind of organic blobs along the edges and maybe some patterns of circles and triangles. So now it looks a bit more full, and I'm going to go to the next activity, which is to fill a letter with that letter and using different fonts. So for this one, grab your color pencils and your markers, and we're going to experiment with the line thickness and thinness as well as the letters. So to start, maybe we'll make a big bold B. So hold your marker sideways to get that thick line, and then you can do it again somewhere on your letter to unify it. So if you only do one, sometimes it can kind of look random, but if you do more than one, it will help the overall design match. And start taking different colors. Maybe you do lowercase with a thin line. And again, no real pre-planned layout. We're just exploring and experimenting, switching up your colors. Well, I'm doing this for the village of Buchanan, which is why I picked B. And I picked these colors because they remind me of the Hudson Valley, the river, nature that surrounds us. And think about all the different fonts that you see in your regular life. There's so many to choose from. Maybe do a block letter and fill it in with a different color. So feel free to do your own designs here. You don't need to copy off of me. Find some fonts that you find interesting. Sometimes just outlining the letter a few times creates an interesting design. And again, repeating it on your page, not only to fill the space, but to help the overall design look unified and help it match. And now with the color pencil, you could play around with lighter letters and using shading with the color pencil. Maybe outline it. Some lowercase color pencil. They're looking a little plain, and I feel like I should use one more color to help my design pop. So I'm going to pick blue. I've got mostly warm colors, yellow, orange, yellow, green. So now I'm going to do an opposite and do blue. And I'll do maybe a couple of squished, bold capital B's in spots. Maybe some script style ones with little decorative edges. So these decorative edges are called serifs in font design, and a serif is just the edge of the letter that has some kind of decorative element to it with an edge. So it could be a little raindrop shaped like this, could be a swirl. So we're not coloring in the letter or outlining it. We're simply using our letters. Maybe I'm going to do a capital B and fill the whole thing in, and then I'll draw a design inside of it. So the more varied you can make your sizes and shapes and go around your page, it'll make your design look that much more interesting. And sometimes you don't need to draw the whole letter. You can draw parts of it to make it interesting, and people will still understand what it is. So these little yellow B's, I didn't fully fill in perfectly, and that's okay. Maybe you want to do a long, thin letter B with a couple of colors to match your design. And the way you hold your marker and your pencil is going to give you different effects too. So think about that as you're working. You hold it up and down or sideways. Okay, just starting to get more full, and I'm kind of looking at it and seeing what colors I'm missing or if there's any designs I could add. Could start getting really funky with it and drawing squiggly lines to create your letters. Really tiny ones might be hard to see, but they'll fill your space as well. And when you get around the edges of the letter, you might need to put your letters on a different angle. So you can turn your page to see it from a different angle. And I'm trying to move around the page and not put too many of the same colors in the same spot. And if you're feeling stuck, go back to one that you already did. There's no reason you can't have just a couple of the same letters on the page also create an interesting effect. And there we go. So I've got a B filled in with bees and a B, I didn't really finish this one yet, but with different doodles. So have fun with it, and hopefully this lettering practice will get you inspired for when you do your logo design. Have fun.